فلا يتدبرون القرآن
ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا
فلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. The Qur'an, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, teaches us the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the face of earth, for the believers to know what to do and how to act and how to be steadfast on the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to be warned from all the different variables in their lives that would take them away from being steadfast on the Sarat al-Mustaqim, on the straight path. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah, in verse number 214, this is what we will discuss inshallah ta'ala, verses number 214 and 215 from Surah Al-Baqarah, talks about some of the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the face of earth, and when is the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes, and also talks about matters of spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Verse number 214 says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أم حسبتم أن تدخلوا الجنة ولما يأتكم مثل الذين خلوا من قبلكم مستهم البأساء والضراء وزلزلوا حتى يقول الرسول والذين آمنوا معه متى نصر الله ألا إن نصر الله قريب. Which means, or do you think that you will enter Jannah, paradise, while such trial has not yet come to you as came to those who passed on before you? They were touched by poverty and hardship and were shaken until their messengers and those who believed with them said, when is the help of Allah? Unquestionably, the help of Allah is near. This verse talks about something that the believers need to be raised understanding, and they need to change what's in them to follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered them to do. People, when they don't know the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the face of earth, they tend to be in haste, or they tend to give up on matters of patience. They are ordered to follow the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are promised goodness on the face of earth and in the hereafter. So when they are steadfast and facing trials and hardship and tribulations and things of that nature, they would tend to be in haste and they might give up on being patient. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and the companions radiallahu anhum and the ummah, the nation of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the Muslims, till the day of judgment, reminding them of the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the face of earth. That for the victory to come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the help to come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to lift yourself from the state of being oppressed, to be among those who are superior on the face of earth, to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, then you have to understand the nature of the path that you have to take. That this path that you have to take on the face of earth is not a path that is full of all forms of joy and ease, but instead you have to face difficulties. You have to face sometimes poverty and hardship and tribulations, but be patient, be steadfast, and seek the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, because the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very near. And this is something that the believers should have certainty in, but they should be prepared for the path that they would take on the face of earth, facing all these types of tribulations and ibtila'at and trials for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So the ayah is like a question. Am hasibitum? Do you think? Am hasibitum an tadkhulul jannah? Do you think that you will enter Jannah? And then you would hear what happens to the nations before. Do you think that the nation, for you to enter Jannah, is that easy. Didn't you hear about the stories of the people before you, the nations before you? How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He created the human beings and sent the messengers, as it's mentioned in the previous verse, that messengers came and people will split to believers and disbelievers. And the disbelievers, they won't leave the believers on their own. They would have to fight them. And this is the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَا يَزَالُونَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ حَتَّى يَرُدُّوكُمْ عَنْ دِينِكُمْ إِنِ اسْتَطَاعُوا. That they would constantly and they would keep on fighting against you till you take away or renegade from your religion. And if you are steadfast and seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, then other plots will be in vain, but it needs patience. Because this is the nature of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us on the face of earth. Has it not yet come to you the stories of the nations before? Didn't you know that they had to go through poverty and hardship and all forms of tests and trials? And then eventually the nasr and the victory and the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes to them. أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةِ. First, it gives that feeling that, which is a fact, that for the believers, their goal is to enter Jannah. They want to enter Jannah. They are created on the face of earth so that they would enter the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the paradise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created for the believers. So when the believers are given the promise and when they read about Jannah in the Qur'an and in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, their hearts are attached to Jannah. And whatever path they are ordered to take for them to reach their final destination, they would take that path with all forms of being joy and comfort and so on, because this is the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and this is the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why they would even go fight for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are so young in age. People, when they are young in age, they want to live long, or they hope for a long life, to enjoy their life. This is how human beings are. But when we see in the stories of the companions radiallahu anhum, that some of them would be 16 years old and standing in line, coming to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, begging and asking the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to allow him to fight for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Someone that age, putting his life in danger for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to protect the religion of Islam, to make the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala superior, right? Because they understood that the purpose of this whole life is to enter the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The purpose of it is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And as a result of that, the believers will enter Jannah. So it doesn't really matter whether a person dies if he's 20 years old or 80 years old. Why? Because the end result, if a person enters the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the everlasting joy. Definitely, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that the best is when a person live long and he would do more good deeds. Yes, but as long as the person is fulfilling the orders of Allah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse is directing the believers to understand the nature of this world that we live in, with regards to the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. First, again, as we said, that the hearts are attached to Jannah. And the believers, they want to enter Jannah. And they would come and ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about a deed that would make them enter Jannah. As this companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he would tell him, Dullani ala amal yudkhiluni Jannah, that tell me about a deed that would make me enter Jannah. Right? And this is something that they would ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for. This is what they're concerned. Day and night, constantly, they are in the path that if they would be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and act according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from them, they were promised Jannah. And they would have the fear that if they would disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or even do acts of worship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not order them in a way other than the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they feared that they will be among the people of the hellfire. So this was their goal, and this is supposed to be also our goal. This is what the Qur'an is directing us. If we want the Qur'an to change in our life, we need to take the meanings of the Qur'an and to implement it immediately in our life. The Qur'an wants us for the hearts to be attached to the hereafter. And again, it doesn't mean that the person would stay away from this world that we live in, or deprive oneself from the joy of this life. Of course, it doesn't mean this. But it means for our hearts to be attached to the hereafter, that we are obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, staying away from sins, and making sure that anything that we do in our life is for the sake of making the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala superior. How is that? If a person is working or having relationships or whatever there is, we apply the orders of Allah. A person is happy when he sees others embracing the religion of Islam, repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, calling them to hold fast to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all of our affairs. And one of which is to fight for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the early generations of Islam did, and as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us. So this is the path to Jannah. This is our attitude that we need to change immediately, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us to be attached to the hereafter, to do the deed, seeking the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Qur'an, تُرِيدُونَ عَرَضَ الدُّنْيَا وَاللَّهُ يُرِيدُ الْآخِرَةِ, that you want the apparent things and the materialistic things of this world, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the hereafter from you, so that you would have your hearts attached to the hereafter. You would still build and live and manufacture and do all kinds of good things, but with the intention to make the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala superior. This is our goal of life. Why? Because if we are believers, we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the most perfect way. So the word أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةِ, it gives the feeling that the believers, this is what their goal is. Their goal of life is to enter the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But they might be in haste, they might seek the path of Jannah out of ignorance, or thinking that this is the proper way, falling into extremes like some people might do, and intentions alone is not enough, unless a person knows exactly the truth from the Qur'an and the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So what comes after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is setting the way for people to understand the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want to enter Jannah? This is the way and this is the path to Jannah. Don't be in haste. وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ, and that you want to enter Jannah and has not come to you as came to those who passed on before you. You didn't know what happened to the people before you. وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. That means this is a call for us to learn from what happens to the nations before us. Because the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is repeated. You want to be among the people of the truth, you want to be among the believers, those who receive Jannah, then go back and see what happens to the nations before, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explained that in the Qur'an. What happened to them? What happened to the believers? Those who were seeking Jannah. And how was the path that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed for them on the face of earth? And as a result of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala praised them in the Qur'an and stated the fact that they are the people of Jannah. So follow the same way. What is this way? مَسَّتْ وَالضَّرَّاءُ وَزُلْزِلُوا حَتَّى يَقُولَ الرَّسُولُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ مَتَى نَصْرُ اللَّهِ أَلَا إِنَّ نَصْرَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ. What happened to them? مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَّاءُ. They were touched by poverty and hardship and were shaken, until even their messenger and those who believed with him said, when is the help of Allah? Unquestionably the help of Allah is near. So this is where their state. مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَّاءُ. See, مَسَّتْهُم literally means they were touched by poverty. Touched meaning, when they are touched by poverty, that means it might not leave them whatsoever. They felt it. It was right on them. It touched them. Not that they had the fear of poverty. There's difference between the two expressions. Because a person might live and he is rich on the face of earth, has the means of wealth, but he is fearing poverty. This is definitely not a very good way to live our life, right? But some people, they live in poverty, although they are rich, because they always have the fear of poverty. They always fearing poverty. They won't give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't enjoy the wealth that they have. Why? Because they are greedy. And this greed will deprive them from giving for the sake of Allah and even enjoying their own wealth. And as a result of that, they are basically like poor people. But this is what is mentioned in the verse, that the believers or the nations before, those who took the path of Jannah, مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَّاءُ. They were touched by poverty. They were real poor people, not just fearing poverty. They had afflicted by being poor. And we know that poverty, it's something that no human being would say, I love poverty so much. Human beings, they tend to relieve themselves from such a state. And being poor meaning a person doesn't have the means to achieve the necessities of one's life. Basic food and drink and shelter, right? If a person doesn't have that, then he is poor and he is in need. And something that is of hardship that would afflict the person like that, that can divert the person from the truth. And the Prophet ﷺ used to seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from al-kufr wal-faqr, from disbelief and from poverty. The Prophet ﷺ used to seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from poverty. Why? Because poverty can take the person away from being steadfast on the truth, making him busy all the time in seeking provisions and trying to live with the necessities of one's life. And as a result of that, a person will be busy away from obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they were touched by poverty and they were touched by hardship, the nations before. As a result of them even embracing the religion of Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test them. We continue inshallah ta'ala with these tests and the nature of the path that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the believers to be steadfast, but the end of it is Jannah, is paradise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created for the believers. So stay with us inshallah ta'ala right after the break.
فلا يتدبرون القرآن.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Still with verse number 214 from Surah Al-Baqarah, that shows the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the face of earth for the believers to be steadfast and not to be in haste when it comes to seeking the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They need to understand the nature of the path of the believers, that this life is not the everlasting place of them. This is just temporary for them, and they would all shall be turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they need to understand that the purpose of their life is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and that they will be tested. There is no way out of being tested. And this is something for the believers to be prepared for and seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be steadfast in facing these tests and trials, so that the outcome of it is the Jannah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created for the believers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying to the believers that don't think that to enter Jannah like this, you have to go back to the nations before and see what happens to them. مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَّاءُ, that they were touched by poverty and hardship. Poverty and hardship. Hardship, whether it's poverty to live a life of being a tough life, being faced with the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they would kill them, they would torture them, they would fight against them, they would ridicule them, as we heard before. All forms of hardship and all forms of abuse from the disbelievers, those who want them to be away from being steadfast on the truth, وَزُلْزِلُوا. And the word zulzilu comes from earthquake, something that a person is shaken. They were shaken. They were in such a severe trial that they will be shaken, meaning that they reach the ultimate level of being in fear and poverty and all kinds of abuse and so on and so forth. And this is the nature of the path that they would take, so that they would receive the honor and the dignity and the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the extent of which حَتَّى يَقُولَ الرَّسُولُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ مَتَى نَصْرُ اللَّهِ, to the extent of which that the messenger and the believers, the followers of the messenger with him, would say, when is the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would come. And this is mentioned in another verse, حَتَّى إِذَا اسْتَيْأَسَ الرُّسُلُ, that when the messengers give up on people believing in them, and they know that they have been belied and so on, right? They would ask, when is the victory from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When is the help to come to them from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And imagine here, this is not just a normal group of believers. This is a messenger of Allah, the best of mankind. That the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him to call people to La ilaha illallah, and aided him, and promised him victory, right? But the victory doesn't come all at once, and if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, it will happen immediately. But when you see the nations and the stories of the messengers and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they have to go through hardship first, and then eventually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them victory, for people to be settled and to understand and to be patient and to put their trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the extent of which that the messenger and the believers with him would say, when is the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If we look into the messengers and their stories in the Qur'an, Musa alayhi salam, for example, and the story of Musa alayhi salam has been repeated so many times in the Qur'an. When we look at Musa alayhi salam and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the moment that Musa alayhi salam was born, and that the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the destiny of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He wanted for the people, those who were oppressed in the land, to be victorious. وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَمُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ أَئِمَّةً وَنَجْعَلَهُمُ الْوَارِثِينَ. That before Musa alayhi salam was born, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted for the oppressed to be superior on the land. So what happened? Musa was born. See how early on. A person living at the time when Musa was born, and he is from among the people of the children of Israel, and they were humiliated and tortured by Fir'aun, would he see that coming? When they all were humiliated and so on? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows best. And there's something in the unseen that is getting ready to happen for them, but they do not know. That's why the human beings, they need to humble themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't be in haste. There might be something that is in the unseen, is about to happen, and you have no knowledge of it. So just be busy with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered you to do in the time that you are in the place that you are in. Change is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are ordered to change ourselves, and to take the means to change others, and to do the best we can. But victory and help is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Then Musa alayhi salam, the life of Musa alayhi salam that is explained in the Qur'an, for these benefits to be learned, and how many different trials and tests that he went through. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to him the message, and when he went to Fir'aun, and he was faced by Fir'aun, and then Fir'aun threatened Musa alayhi salam and the believers with him, that he would kill them and cut their hands and their legs and so on. And we know and we heard and we recite these threats from Fir'aun to Musa and his people. And Musa alayhi salam ordering his people to be patient and not to be in haste, and seek rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they would tell Musa alayhi salam, أُذِينَ مِن قَبْلِ أَن تَأْتِيَنَا وَمِن بَعْدِ مَا جِئْتَنَا, that we have been abused and tortured before you came to us, and after now you came to us. They thought that the victory of Allah comes immediately. And that's again when the human beings, they don't look into the revelation from Allah. They don't look into the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth. They thought that the messenger was sent. They believed in him. Fir'aun is threatening them to torture them and to kill them and so on. Then the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should come immediately. But Musa alayhi salam is telling them to be patient and to seek rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And after that, what happened? We know the story of what happened. And then all the way to the extent of which, when Musa alayhi salam and his people are fleeing from Fir'aun, they're taking the physical means. And Fir'aun and the army of Fir'aun behind him, again the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have come at any time. But this is all for the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be witnessed by the people. That the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when does it come? When people take all the physical means possible. When they don't have any capacity in themselves to change. When they do not change in matters of sins, because people might commit sins to do the change. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade them of that. When they are being patient and applying the orders of Allah, and they take all the means, till Musa alayhi salam and his people is right by the sea, behind them Fir'aun, in front of them is the sea. And then people, they said, we are reached, definitely, we are destroyed. Musa alayhi salam, he would say, كَلَّا إِنَّ مَعِيَ رَبِّ سَيَهْدِينَ, that indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with me and He will guide me. And then we know the rest of the story. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordering Musa alayhi salam to hit the sea with his stick, and it was split, it was departed. And then Musa alayhi salam passed, and Fir'aun and his people drowned. And we see how the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came. So as if there is here a great lesson for us to listen to and to ponder over and pay attention to this. The victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes when the people would fulfill the pure Tawhid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. the pure oneness of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when they turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, when they exert all the physical means, and they are patient, and they're fulfilling the orders of Allah, when all of that is exerted and still they don't see the victory happening with their own efforts, they need to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And they would seek the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, then the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes in place. And this is a great wisdom. Why? So that people would fulfill the purpose of their life in the most pure state. And that is, they try the means and they take the means, and they should, but then they would see that the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not come as a result of their power. It comes as a result of the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the lesson that we need to take from this. Don't think, we should not think that the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come into people, those who are disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or they even want to make the religion of Allah victorious by seeking non-permissible means, by pleasing the disbelievers, by compromising the deen of Allah, thinking that this is the way to lesser the evil, or maybe this is the path maybe to seek so that we eventually will make the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala victorious. This is against the way of Allah. Seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be steadfast on the deen of Allah. Do not compromise anything of the deen of Allah in your life, and the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come. And what you do is basically worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The goal is not something that we live in our life. The goal is to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The real victory is when a person dies in the state of al-Islam. If a person is in hardship and misery and so on, and then death comes onto the person while he is in that state, and he's given the glad tidings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was his life wasted? Because he didn't see the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his life? Of course not. Because he received the glad tidings when the angels would take his soul. And those who come after him, they continue the path. The goal is not to see the victory in our life and not to be hasty. The goal is to be steadfast on the truth, and to call others to the truth, and not to compromise anything in it. That's a great lesson for us to learn. So the people, the messengers and the believers, they will be touched with poverty, with hardship. They will be shaken to the extent of which that the messengers and the believers with the messenger would say, Mata Nasrullah, when is the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Isn't that something that also people, they would say nowadays? And they would say, when is the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would come? The help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would come when people are obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're steadfast and they're being patient. Never give up on patience. Never give up on being steadfast on the deen of Allah, because the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very near. Ala inna nasrullahi qareeb. Ala, it gives you the feel that it's something that is undoubt whatsoever, no doubt whatsoever, unquestionably whatsoever, that the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, qareeb, is near. It's very close. It's very near. Very near to who? To the believers, to the messengers of Allah. These are the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's victory is clear, very near to them. When people are away from being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not very near to them. But if they to believe, if they to be patient with the orders of Allah, then they should have the certainty that the victory and the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is clear, and it's near, because this is the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave victory to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in counted numbers of years. When the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam started alone, and the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, people embraced Islam in numbers, few numbers, and they were tortured, they were killed, and they were abused in Mecca. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was ordered to be patient. وَاصْبِرْ وَمَا صَبْرُكَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. Be patient, and know that your patience is only by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also ordered to be patient till Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala judge between the people. وَاصْبِرْ حَتَّى يَحْكُمَ اللَّهُ وَهُوَ خَيْرُ الْحَاكِمِينَ. If you are oppressed, if you don't have the means for you to be victorious, be patient. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring victory to you. Being patient is not a negative thing. It doesn't mean that you leave everything and you just relax. Being patient meaning that you are applying the orders of Allah, and you take in all the means you can. And you take in all the means you can, the permissible means you can, and you are patient. and you're fulfilling the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not to compromise anything of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala till the rulings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would come. And we see what happens. 10 years in Mecca, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave victory to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Even when he was migrating to Al-Madinah, and he was oppressed alayhi salatu wassalam, and he was leaving Mecca to Al-Madinah, right? Even then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in that journey from Mecca to Al-Madinah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called that a victory. إِلَّا تَنْصُرُوهُ فَقَدْ نَصَرَهُ اللَّهِ إِذْ أَخْرَجَهُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا ثَانِيَ اثْنَيْنِ. That if you don't give victory to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him victorious. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped him when his people driven him out of Mecca. See how the victory is? This is not what people consider victory, that he would migrate from Mecca to Al-Madinah. But this was the beginning of the victory to be very close. And it was. And the Prophet ﷺ and the companions radiallahu anhum, they were victorious. And within 8 years after that, they conquered Mecca from the disbelievers, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destined for the religion of Islam to be established. The life of the Prophet ﷺ of da'wah was only 23 years since the revelation came to the Prophet ﷺ till he died alayhi salatu wassalam. And when he died alayhi salatu wassalam, the religion of Islam has been spread throughout the Arabian Peninsula. And then after that it went beyond by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the verses of the Qur'an is teaching us to be patient. Patient meaning, do not compromise the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Apply it in full, even if you are tortured. Even if poverty would afflict you as a result of being obedient to the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, be steadfast, be patient, because the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very clear. So the verse is teaching us the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the face of earth, that this life, there is no way out of being tested. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that in more than one place in the Qur'an, one of which in Surah Al-Ankabut. In the beginning of it, Alif Lam Mim, أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Do people think? أَحَسِبَ comes from the same word, أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَحَسِبَ. Do people think that they will be left alone to say we believe, and they will be left alone? This is against the nature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you say that you are a believer, if you say that this is your faith, that you are a Muslim, that you steadfast on the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then prepare yourself for being faced with some forms of trials and so on. So what are you going to do then? Are you going to leave the religion of Islam, or are you going to be steadfast? Which is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made for the believers and the nations from one messenger to the other. Then after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the next verse number 215 from Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning here a question from the companions of the Prophet ﷺ to the Prophet ﷺ about spending. يَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ. They ask you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what they should spend. And the answer is also in the verse, revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's get to know what is this and what's the meaning of it and what's the ruling of it. But right after the break, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So wait for us, inshallah, right after the break.
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن.
Welcome all of you to another exciting and new episode of your program, Let's Talk.
If we listen to someone talking about Islam, we should really know their credentials and if they really are the experts they say they are.
This man is an expert in Islamic Sharia. It's crazy.
They use the knowledge for the sake of Allah.
Media with its emphasis, with its agenda, with the spin.
Okay, you guys, today we're going to talk about a very important topic that has been neglected by Muslims around the world.
And they would say, whatever happened in Somalia is a Somali problem, whatever's happening in Pakistan is a Pakistani problem.
Islam doesn't forbid people to adhere to technology.
You guys at home, you hear the doctor. He's telling you guys to be environmentally friendly, go pick up trash, plant a tree, do something good for the environment. It is our responsibility as Muslims.
The Sheikh told us about 2 Egyptians who decided to move on the spot to look at the problem.
I like the extreme sports.
Yeah, right.
And I tried to search what it is.
Yeah,
I know this is a cool part.
They hugged each other and they said, Abu Bakr is my best friend.
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Before the break, we started the verse 215 from Surah Al-Baqarah about a question. يَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ. They ask you, O Prophet of Allah, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what they should spend. قُلْ مَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّنْ خَيْرٍ فَلِلْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ. Which means, say, whatever you spend of good is to be for parents and relatives and orphans and the needy and the traveler. And whatever you do of good, indeed Allah is knowing of it. يَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ. يَسْأَلُونَك. They ask you, O Prophet of Allah, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And this is something that is repeated in the Qur'an. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they asked the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam 13 times in the Qur'an. يَسْأَلُونَك. They ask you. And they would come and ask the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And actually it shows the fiqh or the proper understanding of the companions radiallahu anhum. They didn't ask the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam many things. Why? Because the revelation is coming. And the revelation is coming with the perfect way of life. So it would come and it would perfect their way of life. And they were forbidden of asking too many questions about things that was not revealed yet. Otherwise it becomes obligatory on them. And this is something that the Prophet ﷺ told them that. ذَرُونِ مَا تَرَكْتُكُمْ. That leave the matters that I didn't say anything about. فَإِنَّمَا أَهْلَكَ مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ كَثْرَةُ سُؤَالِهِمْ وَاخْتِلَافِهِمْ عَلَى أَنْبِيَائِهِمْ. That the thing that destroyed the nations before you is that they would ask for things a lot to their prophets, and they would differ after that. They won't be obedient to the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as a result of that, the Prophet ﷺ forbade them from asking about things that no revelation yet to come. But if there is a revelation came, revealed to them verses in the Qur'an, they would ask the Prophet ﷺ about what it means. Yeah, sure, there is no harm in this. So they asked the Prophet ﷺ how to spend our money, what they should spend. And this was revealed, as Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhum and others said, in the optional charity. In the optional charity, in the optional spending basically. We know that there is an obligatory charity which is az-zakah. And as zakah, the obligatory charity, one of the pillars of Islam, it has a certain criteria and conditions. And it's mentioned those who would receive, who are the ones that receive the zakah, are in particular people, certain categories of people, and that's it. It is not for the person to give the zakah money, the obligatory charity, for whoever he wills, in any form of spending he will. No, it's only in 8 specific categories as it's mentioned in Surah At-Tawbah, and this is not the subject of that. But here, optional spending, optional charity. But here, yunfiqun, spending. In what things should they spend? We know that wealth and the concept of wealth in the religion of Islam, we will be asked about everything that we have on the face of earth. Because it's all owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will be asked about it in the Day of Judgment. How did we earn it and how did we spend it? Every single dime we will be asked about it in the Day of Judgment. So a believer should make sure that he only receives money from halal, from permissible sources, not from non-permissible sources. And also, there's another duty here, is to where to spend it. Yes, we have the freedom, as far as relationship with people, we have the freedom to spend our money. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us to spend it in the proper way. Because we will be asked in the Day of Judgment, how did you spend your money? To who did you spend your money and give your money to? Because it's all owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are basically entrusted with this wealth, so that we would apply the orders of Allah and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and seek the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even in the way that we spend our money. So the Qur'an again is directing us to understand the concept of wealth and money in the proper way, not according to what people think, according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. This is, yes, our wealth in relationship with one another, human beings, but in reality it's all owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how would you earn it and how would you spend it, and in what things you would spend your money on, and to whom you would give your money to, and so on, because we will be asked about all of this. So they asked the Prophet ﷺ, and it shows how the companions radiallahu anhum would ask the Prophet ﷺ to make sure that they fulfill the orders of Allah, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with them. Then the answer came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam with the word قُل, say, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And as we heard before when we talked about the verses that talked about fasting the month of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the companions radiallahu anhum, they asked the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِ عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ, if my slaves ask you about me, I am close to them. The question then, when they asked about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there was no the word قُل. It did not exist there. Why? Because this is the Tawhid, the oneness of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no intermediary between the people and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The answer came that I am close to them, that they should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and make supplications to Him. Here, يَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ, they ask you, what should they spend? Say, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Of course, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is the thing between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the messenger of Allah. How would we know the revelation from Allah except from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam? That's the job of the messenger, is to convey the message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the one that we worship is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And the messenger of Allah is the conveyor of the message. And this is definitely the best level that a human being can be in on the face of earth, is to be a messenger of Allah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordering the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to say, قُلْ مَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّنْ خَيْرٍ فَلِلْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ, the verse. مَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّنْ خَيْرٍ. That means that anything, whatever you spend of good, is to the parents and so on and so forth. Whatever you spend of good. That means what you spend, you should spend it from good. You should not spend from evil. You should not earn from evil, and you should not spend your wealth also in evil places, in things that are forbidden for us to spend money on. And we have to be aware that this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مَا أَنفَقَتُم مِّنْ خَيْرٍ, any goodness, right? And the goodness is mentioned in the Qur'an and in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam the same way as evil. So when a person would spend his wealth, or earning his wealth from usury, for example, from interest, or from stealing, or from bribery, or from deceiving others, right? Or from manufacturing something that would harm others, or something that is forbidden for us to use or to consume. Someone that works for a factory that produces wine, for example, or intoxications. It's not permissible for a Muslim to work in such a place. Person might say, but I'm not drinking it. But what's the difference between drinking it or manufacturing it for people to drink? It doesn't make sense that religion would forbid people from drinking, and then it would say it's okay to manufacture it, it's okay to serve it. The Prophet ﷺ cursed the one that would serve it, the one that would squeeze it, manufacturing it, the one that would carry it, the one that would drink it. Why? Because they're all helping for evil to spread. Doesn't matter if you are serving it to a Muslim or to a non-Muslim. It's forbidden in our religion. And it should not be something that it's okay for people if they are guests to us. They come to your home, it's okay for you to serve them if they were disbelievers, non-Muslims, to serve them intoxications. The same thing when they come to your country and so on. So it's not permissible. You have to make sure that you earn your money from halal source, from permissible means. And there are vast and many by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And at the same time, spending from what is good into places that is good. We will be asked about everything that we spend. If a person spends wealth to hurt oneself or to hurt others, or intoxicating oneself, or purchasing things that are evil and non-permissible for us to use and so on, then this is something that is not permissible, and the person will be punished. Because why? We are entrusted by this wealth, unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives. So this halal and permissible and pure wealth that you earn from halal, then you spend it in these categories. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tayyib, la yaqbalu illa tayyib. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pure, He does not accept anything but what is pure. So the source of wealth has to be pure and permissible for you to for these spending to be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To who? فَلِلْوَالِدَيْنِ, to the parents. they have the most right on us, the parents. They come before anyone when it comes to the rights of human beings on the face of earth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the rights of the parents right after the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And why is that? Because the parents are the ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them the means for one's life. And if somebody would be the means for your life, they are definitely the most important people in one's life. Of course, the Prophet ﷺ, his right comes before that, because the Prophet ﷺ, he is the mean for the real life of the people to see the light, to be saved from deviation and disbelief. But after the Prophet ﷺ, the most people that have rights on us are the parents. But when it comes to the obedience to the parents and obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, of course the obedience of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is unconditional. It is not conditioned whatsoever. But the obedience of a person to his parents is conditioned that it's not in matters of sins. It's not in matters that they would order the person not to do an obligation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered. But here matters of spending on them. This is in the optional spending, of course, charity, to spend on one's parents as they used to spend on the child when he was young by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be faithful and to be grateful and to spend on them, especially if they reach old in age and they are in need of their sons and daughters and so on. You see that in some societies, people, they put their parents in nursing homes or neglect them, and they think that it's enough just to spend on them. And this is definitely against being faithful to one's parents. When they are old in age, you would see among the Muslims that are being treated as kings and queens in their families, and they should be. And they have worked hard and spent from their wealth and their health to raise their children, and for the human being to be not grateful to the parents, this is definitely a very evil behavior, and it's a sin, of course. But to take care of them and to protect them and to spend from one's wealth on them. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, أَنْتَ وَمَالُكَ لِأَبِيكَ, that you and your wealth is for your father, right? Meaning that if your father takes from your wealth, he has the right to do that. It's permissible for him to do that without even taking permission from you, because he's the one that spent on you, and he should do that out of your goodwill too. Except if it's something that will cause harm, to take from your wealth to give to your brother, for example, and that will cause envy and enmity and so on. But in general, these are the ones that have the most rights on us. And al-aqrabin, the relatives, and the orphans, and the needy. And as the Prophet ﷺ said, in the authentic hadith, the meaning of which your parents, your father, your mother, and then your sister and your brother, and then adnak, and then those who come after them, further than them. So you make it in that order. So the parents comes first, and the relatives, you also spend on them if they are in need. And the orphans. The orphan is the one that lost his father before the age of puberty. Till he reaches the age of puberty, to spend on them. They need money if they are poor, and they would need the support for a father figure, for a man figure to help them and to raise them and to teach them. And al-masakin, the poor people in general, those who do not have their ends meet, they don't have the means of sustaining their own life. Wabin is-sabil, the wayfarer, the traveler that wants some money for him to reach his final destination. This is also some one to be given and to be spent in matters of charity. But then at the end of the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the glad tidings to the believers, وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ, that anything of goodness that you would do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows of it. So don't worry about forgetting it. Don't worry about how small the amount of wealth or charity that you would give. If it's anything of goodness, min khayr, even if it's so little, that's why it's nakira here. Anything of good, that if you give, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows of it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. And this will be recorded for you. So spend for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the early generations of Islam, talking about this verse, he said, see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is what He mentioned about spending. He didn't say spend it on drums, on pipes, on things that are basically sins or nonsense, like many people would spend their wealth in things that does not bring any benefit to them. But even they would spend in matters of sins, which is not permissible whatsoever, because we will be asked about all of this. So never belittle the charity given, even if it's something small, and spending it in the proper way. And if you're not sure who to spend and who to give your money to, then the verse is giving you an idea that you need to have those who are close to you, they have more priority than those who are further away from you. Verses that teaches us manners and etiquettes, and basically we see that the whole religion of Islam is about all the life that we live in. Speech, actions, state that we are in. We have to fulfill the orders of Allah and to learn the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Qur'an. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among the true believers, those who are the best followers of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا.
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا.
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا.